Chapter 7 Datu. In the early days when we were still small, we had a warm family atmosphere in the company, and all of us, staff and management, had some special relationships. Occasionally, they were very special. When we started to expand the maternity business across Canada, I hired a buyer, Helene Oppenheimer. Helene was single and lived with her parents. They owned 2 pedigree miniature schnauzers, and before she came to work with us, she had taken a year off to breed a litter of dogs. They eventually sold all the pups except one, which Helene kept for herself. His name was Datu. Helene had been with us for about 3 months when she went into the hospital for a surgical procedure. I went to visit her when she went home after the operation. When I arrived at her parents' home, she was crying. Her eyes were all red, and she was on the verge of hysterics. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Well, you know, I have this dog Datu, which I love dearly." When I went into the hospital for my surgery, my mother came and spent the day with me. That was the first time Datu had ever been left at home alone, and he literally destroyed the house. He tore up the furniture and ripped curtains off the windows. My mother was very upset and now says I can't keep the dog at home anymore, that I have to get rid of him. We had tea and cookies, and I listened while Helene and her mother explored the possible options available to them. Then Helene had an idea and asked me, "Why don't you take Datu? At least if you have him, I could see him every now and again, and I wouldn't feel as badly as if I had to give him up to a stranger." I replied, "Helene, you have got to be kidding. You really don't know Shirley. She is fastidious about her house. My kids have been begging for a dog for a long time, but there's no way Shirley will let a dog in the house, especially one who has already destroyed one house. You're barking up the wrong tree." And that was that. I ended my visit and went home. That night at the supper table, I told Shirley and the kids about going to visit Helene and the story about the dog. I ended by saying, "Helene had the audacity to suggest that we take the dog." At this point, I have to say, my wife is an enigma. I have never been able to figure her out from one day to the next, and as soon as I think I've got her pegged, she surprises me. So Shirley looked at me and said, "So maybe we should take the dog." "Are you out of your mind?" I asked. "This is the dog that ate all their furniture." "Yeah," she replied, "but the dog was left alone. Rochelle is still a baby, and I'm home with her all the time, so there's no reason why the dog would be left alone. Maybe we should take the dog." The kids were delighted. They went wild, screaming and yelling. "We're going to have a dog! We're getting a dog!" So I called Helene and said, "Listen, I'm more surprised than you can imagine, but Shirley says that she'll take the dog." Helene said, "Great, I'm so relieved and so happy. You're a lifesaver. Give me $300 and you can have the dog." "What?" I said. "Listen, if I wanted a dog, I would go to the SPCA and get a real dog for no money. I'm not paying you any $300 for this dog, but Max, that's what it cost me for vet bills with shots and all the rest. I just want to get some of my money back." "God bless you," I said, "and good luck to you, but I am not paying any money for that dog, so forget about it." And again, that was that, or so I thought. A couple of weeks went by, and it was time for Helene to come back to work. The first day back, she brought Datu with her. Cute little dog. Needless to say, no work got done that day. Everybody made a fuss and played with the dog the whole day. So my father went to her and said, "Helene, Datu is a lovely dog, and for today it's okay, but you cannot bring him to work again." She said, "But Mr. K, I don't know what else to do with him. And my dad replied, "Helene, I cannot help you there. Datu cannot come to work with you. You cannot keep a dog at work." However, the next day she came to work with the dog again. And my father went to her and said, "Listen, Helene, I sympathize with you, but I'm sorry you cannot bring Datu back." The third day she came to work with the dog again. Finally, my dad got through to her and I supported him. At that time, we had a young man working with us in the warehouse whose name was Andre. Helene made a quick decision and made a deal with him. She decided that she would move out of her parents' home and get her own apartment so she would be able to keep her dog. But this was January and she couldn't get an apartment until May because that's when all the leases expired in Montreal. Her agreement with Andre was that he would keep the dog for her from January until May, and that she would take her dog back when she moved into her new apartment. I think Helene and Andre made their arrangement on a Wednesday or a Thursday. In any case, on the Friday of the following week, she said to Andre, "Are you coming to work tomorrow, Saturday?" He said yes, and she said, "I'll come in too. I want to see Datu. Bring him in tomorrow. Mr. K won't be in the office on Saturday, so he won't know." On Saturday, however, Andre came to work without the dog. Helene asked him, "Where's my dog?" Andre said, I forgot to bring him." "What do you mean you forgot him? So bring him in on Monday." "But Mr. K is—" "Never mind, Mr. K. I want to see my dog. Bring him in on Monday." On Monday, Andre came in without the dog again, and Helene asked, "Where's my dog?" Andre said, "Helene, I'm afraid I have bad news. The very first weekend after you gave me the dog, I went up north to visit some friends at their country house. I took the dog with me, but when I got there, he ran away and I lost him." Well, Helene went absolutely ballistic. The screaming and the wailing that went on in that office was unlike any of us had ever heard. It was worse than if somebody had died. I had never owned a pet, so I couldn't understand her extreme behavior over the dog. It was only after I became a pet owner myself that I could empathize with the way she carried on. My father was very upset too, because he felt responsible for the chain of events that had resulted in having Helene give Andre the dog. Anyhow, while all of this commotion was going on, I had to leave for the airport on a week-long business trip across the country to visit our stores. So I watched this scene with Helene and her hysterics for about an hour, then I left the office and went to the airport. I had a very busy week, running from store to store, working all day, catching late-night flights, arriving even later in another city, and getting up early in the morning to start the cycle all over again. I was very preoccupied, so I actually forgot about Helene and her dog. I spoke to Shirley every day, but she didn't say anything, not a word, nothing even remotely related to the dog. When I got home at the end of the week, what did I see when I walked in the door? Datu's in my home. "What is this dog doing here?" I asked, and Shirley answered, "Well, Helene found the dog, but she couldn't leave him with Andre any more because she doesn't trust him, so I agreed to keep Datu for her until May." To which I responded, "Are you out of your mind? You're going to keep a dog here from January to May. Our kids are going to get attached to him, and then you're going to give him back?" But it was too late. Shirley had made a commitment, and Datu was staying. I should explain at this point that soon after I left to go to the airport, Helene called a friend, and the two of them went up north to cottage country, where Andre told her he had lost the dog. They went to the police station and learnt that someone had reported finding a dog. The police directed her to the house, where she found Datu. But she was faced with another problem. Shirley had kept in touch with Helene, and when she heard about it, she told Helene that she would keep Datu for her. That's how we got the dog. As I expected, Shirley and the children became very attached and fell in love with Datu. In fact, Datu became Shirley's dog and was her constant companion. As for me, I knew that I would be giving the dog back in May, so I didn't allow myself to get attached. I kept my distance. Shirley's dad, who wasn't well at the time, used to come to visit us, and along with Shirley and the kids, he became very attached to Datu too. He especially enjoyed taking him for walks. However, in April, he became very ill, and just about the last thing he said to Shirley before he died was, "Don't give the dog back. You can't do that." When May came around, Helene got an apartment and said to me, "I've moved into my apartment and now it's time for me to get Datu back. Please bring him to work with you tomorrow." That was on a Thursday, and she wanted to take him home Friday night. On Friday morning, I came to work without the dog, and I said to Helene, "I did not bring Datu. I'm sorry, but I cannot give him back. My kids are attached to him, and he's attached to our family. I cannot do that to my kids. I'm sorry, but I cannot give you back the dog." "You can't do that to me. I went to all the effort and expense to get my own apartment so I could have Datu with me. Your kids will get over it. You all have each other. I am alone. You've got to give me back my dog." She made such a case, I could not argue with her, so I agreed to take the dog to her that evening. Shirley and I picked up the children and Datu, and we went to Helene's apartment. She made a big to-do about Datu, and then it came time for us to leave, and the kids started to carry on. "Datu, we can't leave Datu," they wailed. It was heartbreaking, but we left Datu with Helene, and we all went to a movie. We saw the Ten Commandments. I will always remember that because of the circumstances of our going to see it. For the entire weekend, everyone was in mourning for Datu. It was all very sad. On Monday morning, I went to work, and Helene was there with Datu. "What happened?" I asked. "You know you can't bring the dog to work." "I've decided to give Datu back to you. It's not fair to Datu because he has never been alone. He has always been in a house with people, but with me he's going to live all day in the house by himself, and it's just not fair to him. I got a price for another Schnauzer puppy on the weekend. It will cost me $500. Like a shot, I said, "Okay, you've got the $500. I was so excited at that moment. I realized that despite our beginning, I too had come to love Datu. That evening, I took Datu home to everybody's delight. He lived with us for 11 years until he died. He was a fabulous dog, the giver and the recipient of much love and affection. I've told this story not only because Datu was an important member of our family for 11 years, but also because it illustrates the kind of relationships we had within our company. Like Helene, when people joined us, they became like family almost right away.